What's the most high risk, low reward thing you've ever done? Welcome back guys, if this is your first time here, make sure you hit the subscribe button because I do these videos every single day. Climbing up a water tower when drunk to find a friend. Turns out said friend was not even lost, he was yelling at me from the base of the tower. Oh, that reminds me, we got the bright idea to go rappelling off a cell tower at like 3 in the morning. This was not a spur of the moment decision, it was planned. After we were done, we were pulling the rope down and I guess we had left a knot in it. Rope gets stuck between the tower's vertical and horizontal supports about 15 feet out from the ladder we were using, like it was stuck at least 50 feet off the ground. I wasn't about to leave my $100 climbing rope hanging there, so I climbed up, no rope, and walked out on this 15-foot crossmember balancing with nothing to hold on to, made it to the vertical support where the rope was caught, kicked it down, and then had to make it back to the ladder. Obviously I succeeded, but about 30 minutes after I got down, I had the worst stress headache I've ever had in my life. I was puking, my head hurt so bad. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time, it wasn't even that fun. A rock face is much better than just hanging in empty space and sliding down the rope. I once followed a young homeless man I just met because he wanted to show me where he was staying. It was nighttime and he invited me down into a dip in the trees. We walked through a dark section of forest, then he showed me some rocks and small caves with a couple of beds set up. Then we left. I literally followed a stranger into the dark woods because curiosity? Suicidality? Whilst building a house, the second floor had an I-beam that extended out into nowhere that needed to be painted with rust protection paint. The floor had not been installed yet and the joist was still going in. To save time, I shimmied out to the end of the beam and started painting. Every breath of wind made the whole thing sway. Just my movements made it wiggle a fair bit. Nearly took a 6-meter swan dive to a concrete floor about 12 times. I could have painted it after the floor was in, but that would mean laying down drop sheets and lots of messing around. Should have waited. Was a totally stupid thing to do. Stupid, maybe, but I've seen a lot of painters do a lot of stupid stuff like that, me included, so I think you were just playing the part. I knew a painter, took a summer job outside of the city, fell and paralysed himself. Poor guy bled to death. Family found out days later when he didn't return any calls. Jesus, man. Nah, he was a carpenter. Okay, that's dark. Snuck a girl over and had unprotected sex while my parents were home. Got syphilis at 17. Shit. I skipped class after a standardized test. Literally the afternoon teachers were showing movies and doing nothing, and I decided it was smart to get in school suspension to sit behind a warehouse and nap with my dumbass friend. My senior year, I figured out that I was legally an adult, so I could literally just leave whenever I wanted. I was an F and D student, but when I started cutting class early, my grades went to B's and C's because I had time to settle in at home, get an early start on my homework, and still had enough time and energy to play games with my friends on Xbox Live. My hippie teacher I had a few years earlier once said, and he could have gotten fired for this, give yourself a break. Get your grades up and skip class every once in a while as a way to treat yourself. Paraphrase. It worked, but I don't think he meant to do it once a week. Balance on the top rung of a 6-meter ladder to change a light bulb at work. Yeesh, I've done that too. The down spot on my eave troughs came off. We were living in those skinny condos at the time, ground level garage, living room 2nd floor, bedrooms 3rd floor, so the eave troughs were probably 35 feet plus up. I borrowed my father-in-law's extension ladder. It was probably 10 feet short. I put it basically vertical against the house, instead of having the bottom further back, stood on the top rung on my tippy toes and just barely got the downspout back on. So dumb. The downspout on my eave troughs might be the most hectic sentence I've ever heard. Taking a year in a program I wasn't interested in to try and get a girl who turned me down instantly. Decisions are always the worst. I once climbed an old truss bridge to get some neat pictures of myself. I climbed under it and sat on the beams beneath the bridge. I climbed the very top. I hung off the edge of the bridge above several rocks. Once I got done and showed the pictures to my friends and they said they sucked. Should have worn a Spider-Man costume, would have made the whole ordeal look cooler. Come to think of it, even most people would have described the pictures as crap or mega crap. Should just sell it to the Daily Bugle instead. Going way beyond the speed limit when I first started driving. When I think of the car stuff we tried when young, man, I shouldn't be alive. Mixing water with petrol to see if it works. Doesn't taste too bad, but definitely doesn't quench my thirst either. Walking into my house as a confident 15-year-old with a cigarette in my mouth, telling my dad things were going to change around here. Wow, did not expect this. I feel I must clarify for all involved. This was a skit from a Lee Evans concert I had just watched with a friend. Thinking it was a good idea, I don't know why, I thought of doing it to my dad, a merchant seaman of considerable years and experience. A hard man, basically. You're either liked or not, no middle ground with him. I didn't take into account that he hadn't seen this particular concert, and for all intents and purposes, does not do funny. The hit I took that day forever changed me as a man, as it's the best I've had yet. So yes, things changed. I never tried anything that foolhardy again. I still get ringing in my right ear and never ever told my mom because I fear her more. Thank you for all the replies and rewards. I truly did not expect this. Stay safe, everyone. Did it work? I can still feel the handprint on my face. Wow. I started smoking. Like, what the is this stupid It literally has no benefit, it just makes me uncomfortable when I don't do it and when I do it as well. Cigarettes. I have been smoking for 23 years, got a cancer negative CT, haven't touched a cigarette in 2 months now. I stole every wheel off the chairs in my high school's computer lab as a joke during a 20-minute break. I still have one of them. Probably could have gotten expelled just for a slightly funny joke and a useless chair wheel. Well, I'm glad it didn't have a permanent bearing on your future. 8 out of 10 pun. When I was about 7, there was some kind of meeting we had at school where the school counsellor was asking a large group of us if there was anything we were sad or mad about. I think it was basically meant as an introduction to the concept of a counsellor. I was sad that my great-grandmother had recently died, and I mentioned it. The counsellor told me that it was okay to be sad, that there's a grieving process, etc. You know, the regular advice for that sort of thing. But for some bizarre reason, what I told my mother later was completely different. To this day, I cannot figure out why I did this. I don't remember disliking the counsellor or anything like that. The only thing I can think of is that maybe I was doing one of those nonsensical, what happens if I do this thing experiments that all kids do. I told my mom that the counsellor had told me, you need to just forget about it and move on with your life. I had no idea what can of worms I had just opened. My mom was livid. Over the course of the next few days, she called the school asking why the counsellor would say something like that to me, and she discussed it with a few different people. They asked what the counsellor's exact words were, according to me, and my mom sat down and began to write a letter to make it into a formal complaint. She asked me what exactly the counsellor said so that she could put it into this letter. At that point, I knew this had gone way too far, and I was feeling bad over the fact I was going to get this woman in trouble. So I finally admitted. Quietly, she said that it's okay to be sad. My mom, dad, and grandmother were all very disappointed in me. My mom asked me why I would lie about something like that. I genuinely didn't have an answer for her, because I don't know. When I said it, I had no idea it was going to go that far. I didn't know that my mom was going to go all the way to making a formal complaint about it. In the few days before she started writing the letter, I was hoping that she'd just sort of let the whole thing go, but she didn't, so I eventually had to fess up. I still feel bad about that to this day, because assuming the counsellor was told about this, she had to be wondering why I was trying to get her in trouble. She was a nice lady and didn't do anything wrong, but for whatever reason, I clicked the wrong dialogue choice and quickly realised that I couldn't exactly reload from save. Don't beat yourself up about it. It's totally normal for kids to push boundaries and test out scenarios. It's how they learn. I had a similar experience where I was just goofing with my cousins about seeing a man peeking in the window from outside, which eventually escalated to police searching the area with guns drawn. I let the situation spiral out of control initially out of curiosity and then out of fear. You did a lot more than most people by actually fessing up before it became too serious. I was in band in high school. I had a friend from middle school that was also involved in athletics at the time, and the two of us were outcasts among the greater band nerd population and often got talked down to, which even our instructor would join in on from time to time. At the time, flipping backpacks was popular, taking things out of the backpack, flipping the backpack inside out, returning the items to the bag, and zipping the bag back up. One day we had a substitute in, and he had the class watch the typical BS Mozart movie from the 80s again. I found a mega bag of zip ties and convinced my buddy to help me flip every student's backpack, zip tie the bags closed, and then zip tie the bags into the instrument lockers while everyone watched the movie. If we got caught and reported, the instructor 100% would have suspended us, so we were on extra edge, and right as we were wrapping up, the substitute locked eyes with us from across the room and realised what was going on and decided to pretend nothing happened, and we completed the mission right on time. The class was very pissed as the lights flicked on and they saw what had unfolded. The substitute came back for class later that year and talked to us, saying he had to actively try not to lose his shit when he saw what was going on. I love you, Mr. Hudson. Reporting you would have been a high effort, low reward action for him. Letting my mom count to 0. Once my mom started counting backwards from 5 and I started counting down from 3. She stared daggers at me and asked what I was counting to. I said that's how much time she has to stop pretending she was going to do when she got to 0. My spirit lives on to warn others of my misfortune. The perils of mistaking mercy for weakness.